If you're following like a subcontractor model, so like the F-35 is produced through 1,100 different subcontractors, right? And then each of them have like 500 different subcontractors. And if you follow that kind of material chain high enough, you'll go like Viper, and then you'll go jet engine, and you'll go kind of like turbine section, and you'll go to the Inconel supplier, right? And then that Inconel supplier will go to their nickel supplier, and then that nickel supplier is probably somewhere in China. And so the job of vertical integration is to go, okay, right now it's just Viper. In a year, let's be a jet engine. Okay, in a year, let's be casting our own Inconel. In a year, let's be operating our own like nickel mines. And right now, a lot of companies subcontract almost all of that. And so even some of the drones we're deploying, like the electric motors, the wire harnesses, like are made in China. And that's a terrifying world. Like we've seen with the pagers what that can do.
Yeah.
And when you're building something like an F-35 or even some of these quads, like you're talking about many hundreds of parts with supply chains that go 5 levels deep, and suddenly you're branching to like 100,000 different companies around the world. And so that's very, very, very hard to secure. And that's part of Forge.
Yeah.
Is like going and building a truly secure ecosystem of these products. Like how do I have a flight controller that I really, really trust every resistor and where it's coming from?
Yeah.
And that's an area that like we're really bad at as a country right now.
Yeah. Thinking of say like John Deere a few decades ago, they were vertical that way. They made everything. They made their own engines. I mean, they made every part of the tractor in-house. They had, different factories that made different components, and now there's really nothing like that here in the United States, and there needs to be. Even if you can't match them one-to-one production-wise, there still needs to be an ecosystem where it's at least possible, because right now I can only imagine that they know that, right? That they know that they're manufacturing wiring harnesses, and if all of a sudden they say, "Oh, you don't get any more," what does that do to us? How do we circumvent that?
And that's what we're doing with Forge.
Yeah.
And so I should qualify by saying scale is incredibly important, but it's necessary, not sufficient. Like you have to be able to achieve scale and security and flexibility, right? Because the other thing is if you only achieve scale and security, these platforms are being redesigned on like a 3-month cadence. If you go to Ukraine, the weapons they're fighting with right now are unrecognizable to those they're fighting with a year ago, right? And so you have the scale part. We're focused on that. Very, very, very long way to go getting there. Next is the security part. That is vertical integration so that you can trust your supply chain. That is also decentralization, because even if you're vertically integrated, but all this is happening in one factory, through cyber attack, through like cutting your water lines, like there are so many different ways to render. I guess an example here. So like, I don't know if this is still the case, but like during COVID, the lead times on some of these like high voltage power transformers for in a factory were in like the many years. So if it's two years to rewire your factory, you have one like box that if it's destroyed, your factory is out of operation for a year or two. And that's why the decentralization becomes so important. And then the final one is flexibility, right? The ability to design an airframe in 14 weeks doesn't matter if you have to go and build a new factory that takes 5 years, right? That's completely useless to you. So while doing these things, you also have to have capacity that within 14 hours, you can rapidly switch to manufacturing another airframe.
Yeah. Are there any discussions or influence from a company like Mach to the U.S. government in terms of voicing those concerns and trying to kind of spur the ribcage of the Department of Defense or the U.S. government, whether it's encouraging subsidizing companies to be able to do that kind of stuff? Or is that even brought up?
Absolutely. Yeah. So like a good chunk of our pipeline as a company is actual federal dollars to go and improve capacity here. I think the people get it. Like I think 5 years ago, this would have been a much harder like case to make. I think there's still areas that are new, but none of it's something that I get blank stares in DC when I bring up.
Yeah.
So I mean, some pretty incredible advocates have been helping us push this forward.